So what do you want to do? You want to lead us through this, or should we just kind of chat and start the podcast and sip through these as we go?
No,
I think we should.
You guide me.
I think we should just sip them as we go. Just
Yeah, you tell me when you're ready for something, and I'm your dancing monkey.
perfect.
Hey everyone, we had a good streak of podcasts and we're going to keep them coming along. We've been working to get today's guest on for over 6 months. We were first introduced to Joe over email after we wrapped up recording episode 47 with Andrea Wilson, who is making her move up the chain over at Michters. Joe comes from humble beginnings, so it's really a pleasure to see how he has built this brand over the years. We're glad to have more folks from Michters on the podcast, and we'll be getting to work with Pam Heilmann, the master distiller at Michters, to get her on the show as soon as we can. If you haven't done so, we are really going to need to follow us and like us on Facebook, because we are doing a Bourbon Pursuit first and giving away a barrelhead. Yes, the folks over at Michters and their parent company, Chatham Imports, have given us a Michters barrelhead for you to win and adorn the walls of your lovely home. Head on over to facebook.com/Bourbon Pursuit, find the giveaway, and enter it. Entries will end on August 4th, so like our page and comment on which expression of Michters is your favorite or the one that you would love to try. For me, I think the 25 years on my bourbon bucket list, borderline the celebration bottle, who knows, maybe one day. Remember, if you like the show, support us on Patreon, and thank you to all those who are supporting us at $10 a month and sporting your limited edition Bourbon Pursuit t-shirt all around the country. Also, please write on iTunes reviews for us. It is the best possible way to give back to this show and help it grow. With that, enjoy this week's episode.
From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof, and the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com. and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon. This is going to be an exciting one because we've got the business side. We got a head honcho on today, right? I think this is going to be fun for us. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm super excited. We're here at Michters again. We were here, about a year ago, and we talked to Andrea, learned a lot about the Michter story. I'm interested to hear the business aspect and how it got revived and brought back. But Michters is one of those brands, is around for a long time, and then it kind of went away. But it's, they kind of Joe probably saw the bourbon industry coming back and was able to get ahead and take advantage of age stock. And I'm really excited to just kind of hear his story and see how he got into this and look at where we are today.
Absolutely. So with that, let's go ahead and introduce our guest. So our guest today is Joseph Magliocco. So anybody that goes to JosephMagliocco.com, you're going to end up saying it wrong. It's Magliocco. So Joe, welcome to the show today.
It's just great to be here, Kenny. Great to be here, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I just want to make sure I have your title correct, because I know you are the CEO of Chatham Imports, but what are you entitled of when it comes to the Michter side of the house?
I'm president of Michters. Chatham Imports, which is based in New York, is a parent company of Michters, and I work as president at Chatham as well as president of Michters, and I go back and forth between New York and Kentucky.
Which one do you like better?
I love them both. I love them both to death.
Yeah, you sound like you're born and bred in New York, right?
I don't sound like a Bardstown guy, do I?
No, absolutely not.
So I kind of let's rewind a little bit, because I want to kind of talk about your beginning and
Sure.
Kind of how you carved your path through life. People might be able to read, because you do have your own Wikipedia page. I mean, you're one of the few people we've interviewed that have their own.
He's a Yale grad, I know that.
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk about your history, and let's document it a little bit real quick.
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, and when I grew up in Brooklyn, it was not hipster Brooklyn. You're kind of ashamed to say you were from Brooklyn when I was there. It's quite different than it is now. It was always a great place, but just not very stylish in those days.
A lot more skinny jeans now in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Cupcakes.
Yes.
Lots of cupcake places.
Yeah. And Brooklyn is fantastic. And anyway, so I grew up in Brooklyn, went to school in Brooklyn. Just sort of had a typical nice childhood. I was very lucky.
Mm-hmm. And then, so talk about schooling and kind of how you carved your way into like the spirits. Yeah.
Yeah, well, as a little guy, I went to school. It was called Berkeley, and
just
Berkeley
some no-name school like Berkeley, right?
Yeah. Then I went to another school called Poly Prep in Brooklyn, another Brooklyn school. Went there from 5th grade through senior high school. It was great. Had a lot of great friends there. And then education-wise, I went on to college. I went on to Yale, which I adored. And when I was at Yale, I bartended. And that was a lot of fun.
Because how else do you get through college, right? I mean, that's it's everybody's life dream to say, like, I want to work at a bar, and then I want to graduate and open a bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was really great. And my favorite thing was, well, I had one of the best jobs in the world, because in those days, people didn't expect you to have perfect ice, and people didn't expect you to like flame a piece of wood to smoke their Manhattans. In those days, a complicated drink was a screwdriver.
There wasn't any
orange juice.
There was no mixology.
Well, mixology was scotch, added soda.
Yeah.
And that was like mixology in those days, or Kahlua and milk was pretty complicated. So it was easy, and loved getting tips in college.
So how'd you get from serving the drinks to stocking the bar to provide those drinks?
To stocking the bar?
Well, providing all the booze, I guess. Where we are now.
Okay. And then I went from college to law school. I grew up basically in the wine and spirits business, very much so. My dad Tony was a spirits and wine distributor and importer, and so I kind of grew up. I worked summer vacations. I worked as a little kid, helping in the office. I worked in the warehouse. I was a helper on a truck. Summer vacations, Christmas vacations. And actually the first sales job I ever had was also during college. First sales job I ever had was actually selling Michters. And in those days, it was the Pennsylvania Michters.
Cool.
So that's kind of where and I'm actually glad that you say Michters because I hear so many people butchered all the time. Probably like your last name, right? And they say like Mishters or Michters or something like that, right? So
You're not the only one. Our master distiller emeritus Willie Pratt, who I adore, always calls it Mishters.
Mishters, yeah.
Would you cringe? I mean,
I have too much respect for Willie to ever even try to begin to correct him in anything. He's the best. And it's funny, a lot of people really think that Michters is a German name because it sounds German to a lot of Americans. Actually, Lou Foreman, who was running it at the time, had two children, Michael and Peter. And when they changed the name of the Pennsylvania distillery, he put together Michael and Peter and got Michters.
Right. So I think that's a good segue because I kind of want to talk a little about the history because, I mean, I was even last night, I was Googling and sleuthing.
Yeah.
And
We know the Michters today, but not the Michters of the past.
There's a fuzzy history, right? So I guess kind of talk about, where it kind of started because, we've seen Shanks, I've seen Penco, I've seen Baumbargers and all these things. And kind of talk about like how it led up to the point of when they try to categorize old Michters and new Michters.
Yeah, basically, Michters has a really, I think, a fascinating legacy. It goes back to 1753. The legacy traces back. It wasn't called Michters in those days. It was Schenks. John Schenk, who was a Swiss Mennonite farmer, founded it in 1753. Obviously, that part of the country was not bourbon country in those days. It was rye, because rye was very plentiful in the Northeast and especially in Pennsylvania. And they used to call them the Scots-Irish settlers because the Scottish and Irish intermarried a lot and obviously liked whiskey. And they made some really good rye. So it was Shanks in the 1700s. It was renamed, the Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania distillery was renamed Baumbargers in the 1800s. And then going into the, I believe it was the 1950s, that's when Lou Foreman and his partners changed the name again.
Mm-hmm. That's what
you need to change the light, or
yeah, sure, yeah. Looks like we just have to move.
Motion.
Sorry about that.
We're too still.
yes. We're
No, it's all good. So that's what I said. I tried finding as much as I could just because there was all this stuff, and then there was also a legendary run that came out of one of those at the time that was like the A.H. Hirsch and all this other kind of stuff. Like what was A.H. Hirsch? Because we haven't really touched on that in this podcast.
I am honestly really not, there's a wonderful book that Chuck Cattery wrote on the subject, and I would really, Chuck is a great writer and knows so much about whiskey, especially American whiskey in general. I think that is probably the best source of information for anybody that wants to know about A.H. Hirsch. But I really can't say that I'm an expert on it at all.
That's fine. But let's talk about why did Michters have a decline? The old Michters, right? What was the reason it? Of course, we just said bourbon wasn't popular, right? Especially Pennsylvania rye or Pennsylvania in general. So kind of talk about why did it shut down? Was there debts or what was it?
I had sold my first job and was probably around during college summer, probably around 1978. My job was to close out $50,000. This is $1978, a lot of money. $50,000 worth of Michter's gold-plated King Tut minis. In those days, nobody wanted them. And if eBay had only been invented 50 years earlier, I would have had an easy time. It wasn't. And nobody wanted them. So I was familiar with the whiskey. I actually, drank Michters in the 70s and the 80s. It was really good stuff. But, in general, there was a time period when the industry kind of went through really the equivalent of a brown goods depression. It was really, really, really bad. When I got out of law school in '82, I started working. Took the bar exam, fortunately passed. I started working full time in the business. One of my first bosses was a guy, RC, known as friends as Charlie Wells. Charlie had been president of Four Roses, so he obviously learned a lot about whiskey from him. But I remember we were driving down I-95 one day, And there's a funeral procession coming the other way. And Charlie says, "Joe, there goes another one of our brown goods customers." It was really bad. I mean, when you were selling, American whiskey in those days, you were doing a great job if you were down just a little bit less than the other guy. It was a very different environment than now. And this is it's a wonderful industry. It's a wonderful business, but even in a burgeoning, growing market like now, it's not an easy business. And I think that there were a lot of casualties during that time. It was very rough for brown goods, and unfortunately, Pennsylvania Michters failed. They actually declared bankruptcy in 1989.
Mm-hmm. And then, so at what point did you pick it up? Right,
I was working with Chatham in New York in the 1990s. And one of my mentors, who I really respect a lot, I've been very fortunate to work with some really good people, and continue to be fortunate to work with some really good people. We have great people here at Michters. One of my mentors in the business was an older gentleman, Dick Newman. Dick had run Old Taylor, Old Crow, and Old Grandad for National Distillers, a very big company in those days. And he went on from there to become president of Austin Nichols, another great company, Wild Turkey. Mm-hmm. So Dick knew, Kentucky super well. And basically, I was speaking to Dick. Dick was sort of to keep busy, was doing some consulting work when he got older. And I asked Dick to consult for me at Chatham, and he was a dear friend and mentor. And I said, Dick, I really think that American whiskey is so good. I think it's going to come back at some point. And I said, specifically rye. And I said, if you like rye whiskey, there really aren't a lot of choices you can go to a store and buy. I was very limited in those days. It was nothing like it is right now.
It's still kind of limited, right?
Yeah.
I think
no, it is.
Even today, people are saying that the rye boom is putting everybody in a shortage too, right? So.
And why did you think that? Why were you like, American whiskey's going to come back? What did you see?
What was your crystal ball?
It was luck. It was luck. It was a hunch. I liked whiskey. Like I said, I used to drink Michters and some other great whiskeys during college when I was bartending. I just thought that there would be people that really wanted stuff with flavor. And also, too, there's a term in finance, reversion to the mean. When the market is terrible, rarely does it stay terrible forever. When the market is booming, it doesn't necessarily boom forever. Things sort of come back and seek their own level. And, American whiskey was enjoyed by Americans and really so popular for just so long. That I kind of thought that at some point, even though things looked pretty bleak, that things would come back. And I also thought that eventually a segment of the market, and again, remember, we're a little company. We're not a massive company with massive market share. We're little, and so if you're a smaller company, even if you get, what to somebody else is a very small amount of market share, could be a big success and a really nice little business for a small company. And it was my hope that there would be a segment of the marketplace that really wanted flavor and wanted really flavorful whiskeys. I have older friends in the industry, friends I've worked with. They tell me about, at one point, people were doing clear whiskey to try to compete with vodka, and they were doing light whiskeys and stuff like that. And, I kind of just had a feeling that I did not anticipate what has happened over the past 20 years since then, but I did think that there would be at least a sub-segment of the market that really would appreciate and value, flavor and high quality, well-made whiskeys. But again, it was just a hunch. I've had a lot of other hunches that have been totally wrong.
Well, and also too, I guess at that time you go through the whiskey glut and there's tons of, stock sitting around that nobody wanted.
Yeah,
and,
Brian, you were so right. The environment then, we're talking about the mid-'90s, and the environment then was the opposite of what it is right now. Right now, People are tight on whiskey, on American whiskey. It's growing in popularity in the U.S. It's growing in popularity abroad, and people are looking to increase capacity rather than sell stuff off. And the market was totally different then. And we've gone through what I call 3 phases of production at Michters. And if you don't mind, I talk just briefly about that. Because that really was part. You mentioned part of it, the business side of it. A lot of people, even people that love whiskey, don't always realize how capital intensive the business part of it is, and what you really need to do your own distillery, and we didn't have the money to do it. So we went really in 3 phases. The first phase 1 of bringing back Michters, we sourced goods that we had nothing to do with making it. We sourced it. It was already made stuff. That was our phase 1 stuff. And in those days, Dick was a great guy and had lots of friends in Kentucky. It's just aside, I was on a panel with Jimmy Russell, who I adore. And Jimmy said to me at the end of the panel, Jimmy said, "Joe, you're the Michters guy." I said, "Yes, let's talk about Michters, Jimmy."
Yeah. I've been here with you on the panel all day.
Yeah, Joe, you're the Michters guy. I said, Dick Newman sent me when I was at Wild Turkey. Dick was president. Dick sent me to do a due diligence on Michters in the 70s. And I recommended strongly that we not buy it because of, then he gave me this incredibly brilliant, detailed summary with, I don't know how this guy remembers these details. God bless him, he's a treasure. I don't know how he remembers these details from the 1970s. It was stuff that I would have had trouble remembering from yesterday. But he's incredible. Anyway, Dick was familiar with Michters. I was familiar with Michters. Dick knew everybody in Kentucky. Kentucky was awash with whiskey, way too much whiskey. And, in those days, there were some older whiskeys on the market. There were some high-end whiskeys on the market. That being said, demand for, older American whiskey, demand for high-quality, expensive American whiskey was virtually nothing. And when people heard that we were interested, we started with just 10-year plus. When people heard that we wanted to start with 10-year plus, they were doing the happy dance because
they were like, we can finally get rid of this shit.
Exactly. They were just so happy just to offload it, and because there was no market. There was no market for it, and the other thing was when they heard that we wanted to concentrate on rye, they were really happy because nobody knew what the hell to
rye?
do.
We got plenty of rye.
Yeah, nobody knew what to do with their rye. And that's a bit of an exaggeration, but really there's little to no market for rye.
Yeah.
And so we went around Kentucky. One of the first decisions that we really had to make, and thank goodness I listened to Dick. One of the first decisions to make was, do you try to go back to Pennsylvania? Michters was actually an abandoned brand. At the time that we started working on Michters, the brand had been abandoned, and we just filed for it and restarted. Nobody was making it for years. Nobody was interested in it. Basically, it was on the trash heap of history. Even though it had a great legacy, there was nobody in Pennsylvania, there was nobody anywhere else that was willing to put time or money into bringing the brand back and working it. So we decided, let's try to work it. We went around. We picked a style of whiskey. There's a lot of great whiskey out there, and there's still a lot of great whiskey out there from the various distillers. But we picked a particular style that we really liked a lot. And it was a style that we said, okay, God willing, if we're ever in a position to make it ourselves, this is the style we want to pursue. And that's what we did. So that was phase 1. Phase 1 was whiskey that was totally sourced. We had nothing to do with making it. But it was a style we liked and a style we wanted to emulate. Mm-hmm. Phase 2, that was phase 1. Phase 2, basically, in the early 2000s, we started working with another Kentucky distiller. It's not a matter of not wanting to be transparent. It's a matter of the fact that this is a quality company that doesn't work with just anybody. And I had to, one of the conditions was that I kept it confidential who I was working with. Phase 2 we technically were still a non-distiller producer, but it was quite different. In phase 2, we were distilling with the same yeast we're distilling with now. We were distilling with the same mash bills we're distilling with now. A certain number of days per year were Michter's days. Barreling at 103 proof, our rye and our bourbon. So while people would say, well, geez, you guys weren't a distiller in those days in your phase 2, what I would say we were is like I liken it to we were like a chef that couldn't afford his own restaurant
just
yet,
leasing the still.
and went to somebody else's restaurant when he couldn't afford his own, and used was cooking in somebody else's kitchen. So while we were a non-distiller producer, it was all our all our recipes, all our stuff. So that was the phase 2. Phase 3. We reached a point where we did have the money to try to do a distillery the right way. Phase 3, in 2012, we became a licensed distiller where you were sitting right now. We're in the Shively section of Louisville. We didn't have as much land then. Now we're up to 12.7 acres. We have a 67,000 square foot building here that you're in today. But this facility became a licensed distillery in 2012. We started with a small still, and we were doing our own bottling and our own processing. We significantly upped our capacity by putting in what for a little guy is a significant still in 2014. By the time that the White Dog was really ready to barrel and exactly like we wanted it, it took us until August of 2015. And that's when we started to barrel. Because what we wanted to do is we wanted to have two things happen. We wanted to make the same whiskey that we were making during phase 2 with our yeast, our recipes, all that stuff. And basically, we didn't start to barrel until we tweaked the equipment enough so that the gas chromatograph, mass spectrometer, basically the chemical fingerprint of our White Dog here was the same as the chemical fingerprint of the White Dog where we're producing in phase 2. And the other thing is, even though your GCMS can be super tight when you're measuring parts per million, it's like right on.
You're over my head.
But occasionally, it's funny. The chemical fingerprint may look. This is great. Not often, but once in a while, when you go to taste it, the organoleptic, we have a tasting panel here we have several people who are like professionally trained to taste, occasionally, even though the GCMS chemical fingerprint is dead on, occasionally we'll reject stuff because it somehow tastes or smells a little bit too different.
Yeah.
We want to maintain a style. So it wasn't that both things were, cranking until August 15 that we started to barrel ourselves. And as of that time, as of the end of 2015, we became totally self-sufficient with our own production and our own owned facilities.
Here's a business question, I guess. So,
please,
you're using another distillery.
Yes.
So, how the economies of scale? Obviously, they probably are much bigger, able to produce more. When you go and do it in house, is it more expensive, less expensive?
Why even go?
Why
phase
because it
3?
seems like they can probably do it cheaper.
Well, I mean, honestly, if we wanted to, it's an excellent company. There's a lot of excellent companies here in Kentucky. And really, with demand growing for everybody, people needed.
They ran out of room for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People, people needed that. People, it wasn't even a function of, okay, is it going to cost more or is it going to cost less? It's a function of, do we want to keep making whiskey or not?
Right.
At that point, you don't hold the keys to your destiny, right? Like,
yeah.
It's exactly.
And again, it's a great company with great people, but the writing was on the wall that eventually, they had to take care of themselves.
Right.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to rewind because I think I have a question about like each one of those phases, right?
Sure,
so I want to talk about phase 1 and just the acquisition of the Michters brand or label or whatever it is at that time, right?
Yeah. What? Please.
Well, I guess you're a lawyer. What kind of legal hurdles was there to overcome, or was that just something that was just like it's for the taking, like whoever wants it?
Anybody could have done it. Like I said, a lot of people are very interested in Michters now. Basically, from 1989 until our team started, working the brand, nobody thought it was worth spending any time or any money on. It was an abandoned brand, literally, and we did a due diligence. And at the end of it, our lawyers, our trademark lawyers at Arnold & Porter in Washington said, look, this is clearly just an abandoned brand. Nobody wants it. Nobody's made it for years. Nobody's using it. It's public domain. I mean, I'm not sure that's the right wording, but whatever it was, anybody can file for it. So, if you want to go knock yourself out, go knock yourself out and file for it. So we filed for the abandoned trademark, and we restarted the business.
I guess another question there is, like, you could have created Joe's Bourbon. You could have created a new brand. Like, why
Magliocco's.
Yeah. Like, why even restore Michters? Like, why not just
Michter? I was, as I said, I sold Michters in 1978. Mm-hmm. I drank Michters in college. I drank Michters in law school. I drank Michters after law school.
Got you through law school.
Exactly. Trust me, I needed to get through law school. It really, I was very familiar with the history of the brand. I was familiar with the legacy, and it really is, I think, just a really tremendous American whiskey legacy. It just seemed like a shame to see it, like I said before, in the trash heap of history.
Yeah, just not ready to close that book, right? You're ready to start a new chapter or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, so in our team, we had really good people, working, very hard to try to, reestablish the brand.
So let's fast forward a little bit to phase 3. You had the opportunity at this point to start making a distillery, and I guess there's people that they'll be like, oh, I mean, maybe if they revived it, if they took it to like Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania. So like, what was the idea of saying like, okay, we want to keep it in Kentucky. We'll redo everything in Kentucky versus saying we'll put it back and I don't know, maybe we'll take a page out of what Old Taylor's happening right now and try to just take something that's in ruins and try to spend a bunch of money to rebuild. Like, what was the idea of Kentucky versus Pennsylvania?
And I got a little bit sidetracked before, but one of the important initial decisions, that we made in the 90s when we started to work to bring the brand back, one of the key decisions was, do you go back to Pennsylvania, which is a great state, a state with great history of whiskey and great tradition, and just a great state in general. Do you go back to Pennsylvania and restart there, or do you go to Kentucky? And Dick Newman was a very, former president of Austin Nichols Wild Turkey. Dick was a strong proponent. Dick said, you have the best distillers in the United States in Kentucky. You have the best whiskey resources in Kentucky. And there really isn't another place like it, and if you want to make eventually really good stuff, you have to, you want to be one of the best, you have to play with the best. Fortunately, again, Pennsylvania certainly was a good option, but I'm very happy I listened to Dick.
That's a good idea. So I also want to talk about, because you guys are like in the midst of reviving a few brands right now as well, because you talked about the history of Shank's, Bombergers. Now, some of those bottles are even hitting the market. So kind of talk about that and kind of what that means to either it's, still preserving a legacy of this whole family or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, really, Shank's and Bombergers really are, in a certain way, Michter's satellite brands, and as we talked about the history, for years we were talking about Shank's and talking about Bombergers, and we thought it made sense to do Shank's whiskey and a Bombergers whiskey.
Because more labels isn't going to hurt, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we didn't, we haven't done other, whiskey labels, but they're really part of like the Michter's heritage, and we thought that it really went well with the brand.
So it was funny you talked about these older vintages, and that's what you're really going with. In one of the bourbons that are consistently talked about, and it's always, you can't find it anymore, but it's one of the most highly regarded bourbons out there, is your Michter's 25-year rye, right? That's something that whiskey geeks just go crazy for. Sure. So talk a little bit.
I do too. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Talk about stumbling into that one.
Yeah, how did that come about?
Well, to state the obvious, that was stuff from phase one. That was stuff that we sourced that we had no part in making it. However, it was rye we really liked, and it was a style of rye that we wanted to pursue. They're a great. Look, I think one of the great things, I think we're living through another golden age of American whiskey right now. There's so much good stuff being made by some really good distillers. I think Kentucky has the most amazing distillers, but there are other good distillers in other states making really good stuff too. But our 25-year rye, stylistically, is really stylistically like the U.S. one rye now, and like our 10-year rye. Basically, stylistically, they're clearly more Kentucky style ryes. They are not super high ryes.
Spearmint bombs.
They're not. Yeah, and those are terrific, wonderful products for what they are. Our style of rye is a bit different. Our ryes do have spice. They do have a hint of mintiness, et cetera. But they also have, some richness, some sweetness. We sort of have a house style that we try to pursue. And that 25-year rye really, really has it. But again, it's funny. Willie Pratt, who still is with us part-time, he was our master distiller, and he's our master distiller emeritus now, and he's a great guy with a tremendous encyclopedic knowledge. He used to say that to him, the fork in the road point for a lot of whiskeys was 17 years. And he didn't know why, but you could have two barrels laid down the same day, right next to each other in the same rickhouse, and for some reason, one barrel continued to get better, and another one just got like biting into a piece of dry wood. And he said, never really heard a great scientific explanation for why one so much better and one got worse. But the barrels that got older, and what we do is, if we feel that a barrel, as stuff gets older, we taste it more frequently. And if we feel that some barrels are going to turn negatively, what we do is we'll actually put them in stainless steel. Mm-hmm. And we switch it from one barrel to one stainless steel container. And then if it's 18 years old at that time, as far as TTB is concerned, it is always 18 years old because you took it out of wood. If you keep it 100 years, it's 18 years old. The barrels that we let go and continue to age that long, they're pretty good, and they're really, if you get a really great whiskey, there's no substitute for age. And I know people are doing all sorts of wonderful technology and interesting things and interesting ideas, et cetera, to try to age things more quickly. But when you get a really great whiskey that's been aged a long time, you will get layers of complexity that you just don't really get that often. And that I think is one of the hallmarks of our 25-year rye. I adore the stuff.
If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon.
Well, speaking of rye, let's grab a rye that we have sitting
Absolutely.
right here. Let's talk. I mean, we've done enough talking. Let's drink a little bit. Right?
Yeah, I think it's time to drink. And what we have here, the first thing that we have here for today for tasting for our special guests this is Michter's US1 rye. This is bottling proof. So both are bottling proof. Both were laid down at the same time, but the difference is the one at the left was laid down. Was the entry proof was 103 proof. The white dog was put in the barrel at 103 proof. The one at the right, the white dog was put into the barrel at 125 proof. And we take, our goal at Michter's, whether we're doing it or not, our goal that we come to work every day to try to achieve is to make the greatest American whiskey. And part of that is barreling our rye and our bourbon at 103 proof. And the reason for this is to taste the same product at the same commercial bottling proof, but again, to notice a difference between one that was bottled 103 versus 128. And I see that you enjoyed that. I see you enjoyed the 103. So you may want to keep this for take mine for the comparison. Yeah. But even if you nose the two, I think you guys will probably notice a difference. And there's a reason. Barreling, Willie said that when he started in the 1960s, the highest quality bourbons were barreled at 103 proof, in his opinion. And he said, Joe, if we can afford to do it, let's barrel at 103 proof, because if you barrel at 103 proof, you will get a richer whiskey with more flavor and less burn than you will
I'm a
if
fan
you
of the
barrel at
103.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually, I think
it's
the
a
103
difference.
was better than the 125.
Yeah, and again, they're both now at the same proof. But if you're 103 proof, say after 6 years, you're going to be around 110 proof or so. Let's say you started at 125 proof. After 6 years, you could be 140 proof, 138, 140 proof. Now, you want to make hypothetically, just keep it simple. You want to make a nice 90 proof bottled whiskey to sell on the market. One of them, you have to add a lot more last-minute water to go from 140 to 90 than you do to go from 110 to 90. Mm-hmm. A lot of water that hasn't the benefit of interacting with the wood. And yes, and I am, I am not, our master of maturation, Andrea Wilson, has advanced degrees in chemistry, and nobody ever accused me of having them. Stuff goes way, way, way over my head. But basically, there's a chemical explanation why when there's a little bit more water in the barrel, and there is a little more water in the barrel at 103 rather than 125 entry proof, that you actually have better interaction with the sugars in the wood.
And so you also have a barrel strength version of this too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. In fact, we have that today.
Yes, that's what I'm pulling up right now. So
that would be the bottom right on your tasting mat. And the barrel strength rye, we came out with this because we would taste stuff out of the barrel and we say, damn, that's good.
Yeah.
It's like, wouldn't we like to be able to drink this at home?
Everything comes out of the barrel. You're like,
yeah. And so, but this is our US1 rye. This is our US1 rye, just put out at barrel strength.
What's an average age on something like this? And it's a blend.
Well,
or is this a single barrel?
Our US1 rye is a single barrel product.
Okay.
We don't. First of all, it's a non-age statement whiskey. That's number one. Number two, we basically.
I'm trying to plug information out of you here. Right?
Yeah, I'm getting to it, but sometimes a quick answer is not the most accurate one.
Right.
And I want to try to be accurate.
That's the lawyer in him.
So what one of the things about Michters, and I think that is that we release basically our master distiller is a gatekeeper for the quality, and we don't. I give my opinion. We have a tasting panel that gives its opinion. That being said, the ultimate gatekeeper who has the ultimate decision about whether or not to release something is our master distiller. Willie had it, and now Pam has it, and they both took it. Willie took it very seriously, and Pam takes it very seriously. And basically, we don't release something because it's an exact age. We're not a just-in-time company. We're not run by a deal group. It's not 4 years in a day you release the damn thing. Or 10 years in a day you release it as 10-year-old. Basically, if we feel that it's going to be better for what it is with a little more time, another year or two, we'll keep it. So I would say typically our US1 rye, typically has been running, with some exceptions, has typically been running, I'd say roughly around 5.5 years old to 6.5 years old.
Still a solid age.
We released 7 year. We've released. We've had US1 ryes that are 8 years old, or just a shade under 8 years old. It really depends on when the barrels are ready. But I would say average is probably around 6.
Right.
Roughly.
So when I'm looking at all these different ryes, I'm looking at two that have labels on them. The other two were just we're kind of just approved. The
other. This is our US1 rye.
Oh, US1. Okay,
these are our US1 rye. The one that you tasted, the one that was barrel entry at 103 proof. That is what you would buy in a store.
Right. Okay. The 125 was just a hey, thanks for coming by kind of thing, right?
Well, no, the 125 is so you can compare. Taste the sharpness. There's more sharpness and more alcohol, even though they're the same proof, even though the same bottling proof. There's more sharpness and more alcohol, and less richness when the entry proof is higher. We do a lot of, as I said, our goal at Michters, whether we're doing it or not, is to make the greatest American whiskey, and basically, we don't really spare anything when it comes to cost of goods sold. Mm-hmm. Our mandate is if there's anything that we know to do to make the whiskey better, don't worry about your cost of goods sold. We can't afford a $50 million marketing campaign, but when it comes to cost of goods sold, we take all these different steps. And our barrels for our US1 bourbon, our barrels for our US1 rye, before they're made into a Michter's barrel, we want the wood to be air dried outside 18 months.
Well, that's new. That's new information for me.
That is expensive.
Yeah.
That increases the expense of the barrel a lot when you want it outdoor seasoned, let alone 18 months. We work with barrels but that's on the US one. Our barrels, I can show you later on with the staves, which I think Andrea took away, but
it's okay.
I think she showed us last time.
But if you take a look, our barrels are also toasted before they're charred. In American rye, bourbon must be a first use barrel that's been charred. But you don't have to toast it. That's an extra step that you pay more for. We toast it before you char because we feel that the toasting prepares the wood for better concentration of the sugars during charring. And you can actually see the red line in the wood. You can see a major difference in the red line in the wood if you toast before you char versus if you only char. There's all these technical things. There was a period recently when there was a real wood shortage and barrel shortage in the United States. We had no trouble Michters had no trouble getting barrels. And we had no trouble getting barrels because a Michter's barrel is so damn expensive. and
They're like, yeah, sure, we'll make them for you.
And look, basically, if you had a limited amount of steel, they're both great cars, but let's say you're a manufacturer, you have a limited amount of steel, would you rather use a limited amount of steel to make a Volkswagen or to make a Porsche?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You'd rather make a Porsche because your margin's going to be better. And a Michter's barrel is a Porsche barrel. So
it makes me realize that when you go buy a car, you can't get anything without all the bells and whistles. You gotta have the leather seats, the heated seats, and all that sort of good stuff, right? So that's what I'm getting out of you. Yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
So
why not?
YOLO.
So the last one I have over here is the 10-year rye, right? So kind of talk about what was the reasoning behind putting the age-dated one out versus just going with your straight, your US one or having your barrel proof or anything like that?
The first two Kentucky Michters that when we were restarting the brand, the first two Kentucky Michters were Michter's Kentucky Straight. And all our rye, by the way, since we've been involved, all our rye has been Kentucky Straight rye, and all our bourbon has been Kentucky Straight bourbon. We wanted to go with 10 years because, again, we wanted to really make a statement and signal that, this is quality stuff. And it was super quality stuff. Again, you taste the 25-year rye; it's aged pretty damn well. We were just trying to make really good whiskey and show that American whiskey. We wanted to have whiskey that was well matured and flavorful. Mm-hmm. That was sort of what we were trying to do, and that's what and again, like I said, we were hoping, not that it was going to be we're still a very little brand, but we were hoping that there would be a small segment of the market that would appreciate it and buy it.
And I think it doesn't sit on the shelves, so yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah.
So let's we've talked a little bit about the rye. I kind of move over to the bourbon.
Sure.
And the first thing I want to talk about the bourbon is probably the unicorn of them all from you, and that's the celebration, right? And okay. I'm gonna put you in the hot seat a little bit.
Sure, why not?
So how do we go about justifying a $4,000 or $5,000 price tag on it?
Look, one of the things that Willie and I, when we were first talking about this, there are amazing spirit products from all over the world. Amazing quality, amazing packaging, etc. That being said, I've been, you go look at a catalog like Wally's in Christmas time in Los Angeles. You will see spirits from other countries for $50,000 a bottle. Mm-hmm. You'll see scotches, wonderful scotches for tens of thousands of dollars. You'll see other great spirits from other countries for amazing amounts of money. And they're fantastic products. Willie and I said, we actually think that the best American stuff could be as good as the best stuff from anywhere in the world. And so we set out to try to produce something that we thought was really, really, really exceptional. When you take, for example, our 2016 celebration, we had access to over 30,000 barrels that we own. We selected whiskey from 6 barrels out of 30,000. So
that puts a price tag on your time.
And they were they're really pick of the litter barrels. But one of the other things that's really interesting, and I've seen this over time, you could have 2 bourbons that are really good. This Bourbon A is really good, Bourbon B is very good. You mix them together, the mix is worse than either one of them. You could have 2 great ryes you put together, the mix doesn't go very well. For some reason, certain things don't blend well together, even though they're independently very good. So it's not just a matter of finding something that is really wonderful and something else wonderful, and you put it together. There really is an art to blending, because you have to find stuff that's terrific, but when you put it together, is even better. So there's that part of the art. The other thing is just that we used aged stocks, and it's a non-aged statement whiskey, but our youngest stuff was over 10 years old, and we had whiskey in there that was 32 years and 11 months old. So
which is very rare to find.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of 32 year 11-month-old whiskey around. And we think that we think that the result was very, very good. It flew when we released it. It just sold really, really well. You
can't say no to that, right?
No. And people, a lot of people seem to appreciate it. I mean, we've seen it at, we've seen it in wonderful on-premise places. I've seen it for over $1,700 a shot on premise.
Oh, I know. It's
crazy. So look, for somebody that wants something rare and world class. And I think it really, really is a very, very special whiskey. And for somebody who wants something that's rare and world class, and wants to spend the money on it as a luxury, I think it's great stuff.
Right. And and you're not geared towards the casual bourbon buyer with that either, right? I mean, the packaging that goes into it is phenomenal. Like the gold emblems and everything that goes onto it, right? I mean, it's definitely
the packaging alone is quite expensive.
Right.
But the whiskey is I think the whiskey is truly extraordinary. And look, the whiskey I probably drink the most, the Mishters I probably drink the most myself. The Mishters that Willie drinks the most himself is our US 1 bourbon, which is our recommended retail in the US is $48 a bottle. Quite honestly, we put as much care and we worry as much about US 1 bourbon as we do about Celebration. Anything Michters, we want it to be for what it is, really, really, really good, or else we won't release it.
So it's just funny. I had a comment about that because I watched the news segment when you were on with the Fast Money people.
Okay.
And I saw you, and you opened up a brand new bottle of Celebration.
Yes.
And and when you're on live TV on a national publication, I mean, like, you've got to get everything you've got to do in like 2 minutes, right? Like that's about your time. And it was just, I remember you pouring her as part of this celebration, and it's just like, oh great, now we're off to commercial. I was like, oh, I felt so bad. I was like, she never really like understood or appreciated like what she had in her glass. It felt like, but it was just, I just watched it, and I was just like, man, there was so many people that would just love to be in her footsteps right now.
Yeah, look, I was thrilled. I was thrilled to be on there, and I was also fortunate to be on Power Lunch as well. I think they like the stuff, actually. Yeah. It was a terrific experience to be on there.
So, you talk to Pam quite a lot. So, like, what's the time frame right now of when you're looking to start releasing your own distillate? I mean, is there a roadmap? Or
when people ask me, when visitors say to me, I can't wait to taste the stuff that you're producing at your Shively facility. We call this distillery M2, and we call Fort Nelson M1. I said, well, what you should do is you should go to a store, buy a bottle of US 1 bourbon or rye, or buy a bottle of 10-year bourbon or rye, and that's exactly what it's going to taste like.
Right.
Because again, we didn't start until the White Dog, chemical fingerprint was right on with the stuff we were producing before, and until the taste of the White Dog was right on, and the nose of the White Dog was right on. So it should be very, very similar to, it should be identical to what we have right now.
Right. And I guess that also goes in with the aging aspect, right? I mean, do you have your own on-house or on-site aging that you're doing, or when you were sourcing, yes, were you aging here too? So it should be relatively similar.
We have heat cycling here. If you go through our warehouse, at strategic points, so we can measure the temperature in the barrel. We measure the whiskey, measure the temperature of the whiskey in the barrel. We measure barrels at strategic points, so we get a sense of like this part of the warehouse, what's the temperature of the liquid inside. We have a probe that goes inside. It's attached to a thermometer that has a USB port. Our people have contraptions.
Wait, your barrels have USB ports?
No.
I thought you were about to say, I was like, that's awesome.
No, there's a probe that goes in to the liquid. And not every barrel, but again, strategically placed so we can tell, like, the barrels in this area, the liquid is, 78 degrees. The barrels in this area, it's 90 degrees, whatever it is. But there's a USB port attached to the probe, and our people actually go with an electronic contraption. They hook it up to the USB port, and that records at that date, at that time, what was the temperature of the liquid in that barrel, and so we have a sense of, okay, the barrel's in this part of the warehouse at this temperature. We heat cycle, and when you heat cycle, what you do is when it's cold outside, you actually heat up the warehouse for a period of time. And then after you heat up the warehouse, you open everything up and let the hot air out and cool down the barrels. And really, it's temperature change that really makes the air at the top of the barrel. The barrel's on its side. There's air at the top of the barrel. When it gets hot, the air expands and it squeezes the liquid into the wood. When it gets colder, the air at the top contracts. There's less pressure, so some of the liquid comes back out.
Pressure, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And exactly. And so in Kentucky they call that in and out a cycle, and that happens naturally in Kentucky several times a year. One of the great things about Kentucky, obviously the limestone shelf, which makes great water for distilling great whiskey. But aside from that, one of the other things that are great about Kentucky is that it has very changeable weather. And the theory is that when it comes to bourbon American rye, that's actually an advantage because it's a temperature change that makes the whiskey sort of soak in and out of the barrel and expose it more to the red line. So we induce extra cycles through our heat cycling. Now, heat cycling is expensive to do. Mm-hmm. We're not the only
But you
one.
and Mishters don't take any. You don't.
No, we don't.
You don't throw any expense at it. So
and
we've noticed that part.
And when you heat cycle, you get a significantly higher angel share of evaporation. Mm-hmm. So when you go to empty the barrel out, you don't have as many bottles, but we think it tastes better.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the bourbon that we are drinking right here. So we have the US 1 small batch bourbon.
US 1 small batch bourbon. Our small batches are really small batches. There's no legal definition that I am aware of small batch in the United States.
It could be 2 barrels. It could be 2,000 barrels. Doesn't really matter.
Correct. But one thing that we did here, Pam and Willie and me, we sized our batching equipment, and I could show you later on. Our batching tanks are 1,100 wine gallons, so 1,100 liquid gallons, and basically, that means that they can hold the contents of 20 full barrels, not more. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we wanted our small batches for quality control to be very small, if you have, I don't care how great a distillery you are. Once in a while you get a barrel that's a little bit musty. Once in a while you get a barrel that's a little overly woody.
Got some funk to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that happens to everybody. If you have some funky barrels and you mix them in a big lot, they'll kind of get lost. It may influence it a little bit. They get lost. If you have one barrel that's not right, in a batch of 20, it is horrible. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really bad. So our people know that if things aren't right, they can't use it. Right. So it enforces a certain production discipline. This is our US 1 bourbon. It's barrel entry proof, 103 proof. That is the single most expensive thing we do, entering at 103 versus 125 proof. It's more expensive than heat cycling a product is. I don't know anybody. Maybe there's somebody, but I'm not aware of anybody currently that's entering, their standard stuff at 103 proof.
Right. But the only other person that I know that's doing low is Wild Turkey, but they're not even at 103 as far as I remember. So
okay, yeah. I mean, Wild Turkey's, like I said, Jimmy's. I adore Jimmy. It's a fantastic product. I'm not aware of what their entry proof is.
Right. I'd have to dig in my archives, but I can't think about it right now. But I kind of want to move on to the 10-year, right? Because I mean that's and the 10-year has a great historic past to it, right? I mean, you know, you can do all kinds of sleuthing, and wherever it was sourcing from before. I mean, everybody talked about it was just probably one of the best bourbons you can possibly get on the market because it was even greater than 10 years back when you could get it in 2010, 2011 back then, right? And then I think it switched around 2015, but it's still a phenomenal bourbon no matter which way you put it.
And again, you know, we don't release it because it's 10 year and a day old. You know, it typically I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know the exact age of the one that we have right now, but you know, we'll release 12-year-old, release older stuff as 10-year bourbon. You know, if we think there's a story, you know, years ago how Willie got his nickname Dr. No, and you know, we had been 2 years with no 10-year bourbon on the market, Steve Ziegler, who's been with me since the 90s when we were restarting Michters, Steve Ziegler runs our sales. And Willie had really good, like I think it was close to 11-year-old bourbon. He wouldn't release it as 10-year-old because he said another year or two is going to be amazing. And you know, Steve, the sales guy who'd been out of 10-year bourbon for 2 years, you know, and having accounts hammer him, you know, where is it? You know, instead of sales forces hammer him. He said, Willie, you know, you're blankety blank Dr. No all the time, and you know, and just threw a fit. And you know, shortly after when we and Willie eventually released it about over a year later, and Willie released it, and you know, New York Magazine did a blind tasting of 12 bourbons. I believe it was 12. And really good products. And in the blind tasting, you know, Michter's 10-year finished first. And you know, Steve sent Willie a copy of the article, and just, you know, Willie, congratulations. And Willie sent him back the same exact article with his writing on it. Steve, this is why we wait.
Yeah.
So you know, but you know, we're you know, as I said, you know, and now the gatekeeper, you know, the new one in the Dr. No position here is Pam Heilmann, who's terrific. Mm-hmm. Have you met Pam?
I have not. We still have to get Pam on the podcast at some point. I think it'll happen. It'll happen soon.
Yeah, Pam is really wonderful. You know, when Willie and I, you know, we knew that eventually Willie wanted to go to a flexible schedule. And, you know, when we were searching for a master distiller, we went to a bunch of people we respected in the industry and for a future master distiller for succession. And we said, you know, okay, who are the 4 best American distillers? And Pam was on everybody's list. You know, she worked directly with Jerry Dalton when he was master distiller at Beam. And for, I think, roughly her last 8 years there, she ran Booker No, the largest bourbon distillery in the world. Mm-hmm. And she's fantastic. She's really detailed. She's really quality driven.
That's awesome. I mean, the funny thing is, you know, especially during this time when there's a revitalization of women in the industry, and she was doing it for such a long time, and it's great that she has that honor now, and being able to have the privilege of being able to be a master distiller here at Michters as well. So the last one I want to talk about is this one that is a limited release, kind of just started coming around at the Bourbon Affair, and that's the Michter's Barrel Strength Bourbon, right? So talk about the idea here.
This is a really limited release. This is only being released in Kentucky. This is the first time we've ever released it.
This is my first time ever trying it, so I'm excited.
So, well, I'm really glad you're trying it, and I hope. Oh God, tasting live is a bit dangerous. I hope you like it.
I think you'll be safe.
But you know, the Kentucky Distillers Association is a really good group. It's a great group of companies, and it's very well run. And they run the Kentucky Bourbon Affair, which is a special thing. And you know, and we got some feedback from them, some feedback from some of our visitors. And they basically said, you know, it would be great if you guys could do a special release in honor of the Kentucky Bourbon Affair when people come visit and stuff like that. And you know, Pam really likes barrel strength stuff. And so she thought that this might work really, really well. And this is our US 1 bourbon at barrel strength. So it really was done, to commemorate, the Kentucky Bourbon Affair in honor of our home state. I would love to sell this everywhere. Right now, Michters is selling around the U.S. We're selling in over 40 countries. And we're very, very proud, Drinks International, picked us as, one of the top trending American whiskey brands internationally and in the U.S. But this is a really, really special whiskey. The reason that we're not selling it, more outside Kentucky, and the reason this is just a special sort of little thing in honor of the Kentucky Bourbon Affair, and again in our home state, is just because we are so short in goods. I mean, we are allocating everything that we make, and in every bottle of this, that we release is
probably two to three less bottles of the regular US one.
Not quite, but but it's less that we have to sell. The other that is really our US 1 bourbon, our US 1 rye now have to be allocated, and we're in a short supply situation compared to demand. And the other thing too is one thing that we haven't done is we've even when we didn't have our own distillery, we didn't just fill in with stuff that we wanted to have a certain style and maintain that. We want to make sure that we maintain the quality, so we'd rather run out than come out with stuff that's not right. But let's taste.
Yeah, cheers to this, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It is good.
Yeah, it's good.
It is good.
And
so I guess a good question is, barreled at 103. What's the proof that this is coming off at then and bottling?
It varies from barrel to barrel. It's a single barrel product. It varies from barrel to barrel. This particular barrel is 110.6.
So 110.6. That's awesome. I mean, I think it's
110.6.
It's really good. Very
and if you
full,
add, I should give you a little bit more.
I'm not going to say no to it, just a little bit more.
Just to add a tiny bit of water.
I can do that. Add a capful here.
I was at Larry from Silver Dollar yesterday, who was just amazing.
Larry's a good guy.
I mean, Larry's an amazing mixologist, and he also just is brilliant in terms of breaking down whiskeys. I mean, he's such a talented guy. And he said, Joe, put a little bit of water in it, and you can almost start to smell pecans and some other stuff going on.
Yeah, there's some more stuff that does happen, right? I wasn't, when we were going through this, I'm more or less trying to think of questions and good questions to ask rather than trying to think of good tasting notes. But yeah, it's definitely got some more characteristics that are thrown into it, and that's fantastic. So I kind of want to start wrapping this up a little bit and kind of finishing up some good questions here. So what's the future looking like for Michters right now? Whether it's expansion, whether it's line expansions of the barrel strength. I mean, what are you kind of seeing as on the short horizon for you right now?
Look, we are, we're about good American whiskey. We have different things that we experiment with and try from time to time. Some of them are disappointing. We don't release them. Some are really, really great, so maybe we'll do a special release or this or that. But we're always looking, at stuff. But basically, our bread and butter is to continue, the style that we're making. I mean, we like the stuff that we're doing. It's maintaining the quality. And, one of the things here that we're really lucky about is the people. We have a really, really, we have people that care about quality.
Did you actually know I have a cousin-in-law that works for you too?
I had no idea.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit afterwards, right? Yeah, but I think that of the people that I know here at Michters, I think what you're putting out is a quality product. Definitely always excited every year when I can get that phone call from my local liquor store. It says like, hey, we got the Michters 10-year rye in for you. Like,
excellent.
Come and get it, right? Yeah, it's like it's one of my favorites that I love. And of course, I think the barrel strength rye has kind of really got me hooked on a lot of that stuff too. And I'm glad to see that there's a possible barrel strength bourbon that's going to be available in Kentucky for a very short period of time, limited. You know, we'll kind of see what happens with it, but I think it's a very strong future about that. You know, for anybody that has been listening to this podcast for a while, you know, I've been talking to Joe now for probably close to a year after we had Andrea on the show a long time ago, trying to figure out like, when are you gonna be back in Kentucky? Like, and it finally happened, right? So I'm super glad that you took the time out of your day to join us.
I am thrilled, Kenny. I'm thrilled to be here with you and Ryan. It's great.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, I've listened to your podcasts, and they're great, and it really, I mean, just so much good information, and they're interesting.
Well, good. Again, thank you for coming on as a guest today. It was a pleasure to finally meet you, hear your story. You know, we like I said, we don't really get a whole lot of the business side. You know, we get the Andreas, we get the Pams, and we get them, talk to them all the time. But you know, yours is a very unique side. Being able to understand a lot of the decisions and the rationale that go into this. It's just not gut instinct. It's just not science, right? It's actual business and thought and all this other kind of stuff that goes into making a healthy company too, right? So
right. No, thank you so much.
So awesome. So if you like what you hear, make sure you support us and follow us on Instagram, social media with Facebook and Instagram, I already said, as well as Twitter, and also share the podcast. You know, there's a lot of people that are getting into bourbon, they're drinking a bourbon, maybe they're going out and they're buying their first bottle of Michter's US1 bourbon, and you say, you know, you got to listen to these guys called Bourbon Pursuit. They put out some great podcasts. It's a lot of good knowledge to share. So spread it through word of mouth. That's great. And you can also write us a good review on iTunes. Those iTunes reviews go a long way on keeping us the #1 podcast in bourbon. If you like what you hear, also, if you want to see more other guests, send us an email, theduo@bourbonpursuit.com. We're also looking for partnerships. So go to bourbonpursuit.com, look at the tab at the top called partnerships. We're looking for people to help support the show to keep this going. So with that, Joe, again, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. And we will see you all next week.